Okay, to move one term from one side to the other, always do the opposite operation. Okay, with the exact same number. So I've given you some concrete steps to help you solve equations, okay? And the most important thing to do, remember, is whatever you do to one side of the equation, you have to do to the other, okay? Whatever you do to one side, you have to do to the other. You got to keep it balanced. So a couple things to help. Number one, always have the students box the variable, because that's who we want to isolate. We want to get the variable all by itself, so it helps to identify where the variable is. And I want you to draw a line through the equal sign. And the reason I have you do that is to help you separate the left and the right side, so that you know whatever you do with the left side, you have to do the right side, okay? And then I'm going to have you highlight the operation. Now, when I want you to highlight the operation, that's going to be either add, subtract, multiply, or divide. And then you're going to write the inverse operation. You're going to write the opposite operation, okay? The opposite operation underneath on each side of the equal sign. Now, some of you don't know what opposite operations are. I left a space up here, back here above in this little extra section right here, where you can write what opposite operations are, okay? Addition and subtraction are opposites, okay? The opposite adding is to subtract. The opposite of multiplying is division, okay? So multiplying, dividing are opposites, adding and subtracting are opposites. So when I say inverse operations, that's what I'm talking about, okay? So you'll do the opposite operation on both sides, and then after you put the opposite operation, you're going to highlight the number that's behind it, and you're going to use the exact same number underneath it to get rid of it, okay? And then you just solve it in the calculator and you check it. So let's try some, okay? So these are the steps I told you to do. First of all, I want you to box your variable. You need to always identify where our variable is. And I'm just going to go ahead and box all of them, and we're going to do that step on all of them, okay? So box your variable, that's step number one. And I'm going to box that in, okay? And I told you to draw a line through the equal sign. I'm going to use a highlighter so it's nice and thick. And some of you just may want to go ahead and do this on all of them first, because it's just really easy to think through that. Okay? So box your variable. The variable, that's what you want to get by itself. Notice sometimes it's on the left, sometimes it's on the right. Okay, to get rid of something, to move a term, you do the opposite operation, okay? So I want you to shade in with your with the math color or highlighter. We're going to shade in the operation. The operation right here is a plus, okay? The operation right here is a minus. This is times, so I'm going to highlight what's in between, and this is division. Okay, we'll just do this top row, okay? Do the opposite operation. The opposite of adding is to subtract. So make sure you put subtraction on the left and the right side. Whatever you do to one side, you have to do to the other, okay? The opposite of subtracting is addition. So whatever I do to the right side, I do to the left side. The opposite of multiplying is dividing. Whatever I do to the left, I have to do to the right. And whatever the opposite of division is multiplication. So I'm going to put a little dot right there for multiplication. Okay? Now, you have to take whatever's behind it. Now, I'm going to circle so you can see it. But by shading this in, it really helps you to see what is behind that addition sign. It's a -7. I use that exact same thing. So I have to put a -7. Okay? And I have to put a -7. So the -7, if you were to punch this in your calculator, -7 minus -7, those will cancel out. And since they cancel out, the only thing left is x. So I bring x down, equals. And then if you punch the other side in your calculator, Okay, so you're gonna punch in 15 minus negative 7, you would get 22. X equals 22, that is my answer, okay? Now, it's a solution, and what that means is, okay, if I were to plug in 22 for X, so I'm just gonna show you what this would look like. If I were to plug in 22 for X, if I said 22 plus a negative 7, and I were to put that in my calculator, I would get 15. And that would be a true statement. Like I could punch that in and that would be true. That's what that means. So 22 is my answer. It's my solution. Okay? On the next one, okay, we said the opposite of subtracting is addition. Okay? What number do I have behind the subtraction? I have a 6. Okay? Now, some of you may get, really confused, and you may say, Miss Pearsall, this is a negative 6. What's the opposite of a negative 6? A positive 6. So minus 6 and plus 6, they're opposites. So whether you want to think of the opposite of subtracting 6 is adding 6, or the opposite of a negative 6 is a positive 6, that works for addition. So you add 6 to the other side. When you punch this in your calculator, negative 15 plus 6, you get negative 9 equals X. And these cancel out. So this negative 9 is your solution. The next one, the opposite of multiplying is to divide. And I divide by whatever is by the variable. That's a negative 3. So I need to divide by negative 3. So X equals, and when I punch this in the calculator, negative 63 divided by negative 3, I get positive 21. 21 is my solution. On the next one, the opposite of dividing is to multiply. Instead of dividing by 5, I'm going to multiply by 5. Okay? These cancel out, and I have negative 325 equals X, and that is my solution. So if I go through the steps on the next one, okay, this operation is multiplication. The opposite of multiplying is to divide. So I'm going to divide. Okay. What is beside? It is a negative 15. So I divide by negative 15. I'm going to get rid of the number that is beside the variable because I want the variable by itself. Negative 15 divided by negative 15 is 1, and 1 times n is n. Negative 280 divided by negative 15, negative 280 divided by negative 15. You punch that in your calculator and it will simplify. So 56 over 3, 56 thirds equals n. Now, on the next one, you might want to put a star by this one. Okay? First of all, minus and negative. These two cancel out, so it's really 9 plus n equals 2. Okay? The opposite of a negative is a positive. Two negatives make a positive, so 9 plus n equals 2. And then I would rewrite it where the variable is first. Students get really confused with what to do on this one. And you do the opposite operation, but sometimes students get confused. You could say the opposite of a positive 9 is a negative 9, or the opposite of adding 9 is to subtract 9. Okay, so it helps, I think, just to rewrite it and say by the commutative property n plus 9, and the opposite of, and then do the opposite operation. The opposite of adding is to subtract, so, and then we put the 9 down. So 2 minus 9 is negative 7. So n equals negative 7. On the next one, the opposite operation, we have a plus sign, so the opposite of adding is to subtract. And again, see, this is where some of you get confused because the m is in the wrong spot. So I would, instead of doing that, I would rewrite it first. Okay, so I'm just going to rewrite. Negative 32 is the same, but I'm going to switch these two. So I'm going to say negative m plus 7. That way the variable is first in the front, and now you can follow your steps. The opposite of adding 7 is to subtract 7. Okay, so negative 32 minus 7, that's a negative 39, equals, now notice this is negative m. Okay, Now, I do not want a negative m. I want a positive m, okay? So I am going to, this is like saying divide by -1, which is a positive. So you can think of it as just taking the opposite. What is the opposite of negative m? Positive m. So what's the opposite of negative 39? Positive 39. It is the same thing as dividing both those by -1. Okay, so you can either divide by -1 or you can think of take the opposite of both sides. Okay, and the last one, the operation, I don't need that, that's a fraction. I don't need this side because there's no variables on 3/4. I only pay attention to the one that's on the side with the variable. That is division. The opposite of dividing is to multiply. So you're going to multiply by what's attached to the variable, which is -8. So I'm going to multiply by -8. And so I get j equals, and if you punch that in, now you're going to have to do 3/4 as a fraction times -8. That's what you punch in. And when you punch that in, you get -6. Okay. Now, let's say we have some equations. The quotient. Quotient means to divide. The quotient of blank and blank. So where you see that word and, that's your division. So a number n divided by -10 equals 60. Okay? So now I'm going to solve it. Now I'm going to write it just a little bit neater over to the side. N divided by -10 equals 60. Now I'm going to do the steps just like what we said. Box your variable. Draw your line. Okay? Look for the operation. It's division. What is the opposite of dividing? It is multiplication. And then what's attached to the variable? -10. So you're going to multiply by -10. You multiply by the exact same thing. These cancel out. N equals -600. And that is your solution. Okay, on the next one, 5/8. Anytime it says of a number, of is multiply. So 5/8 times n is equals -1/2. Okay? So this operation right here, well, I'm going to draw a line, and I'm going to box my variable first. Box my variable, draw my line. The operation is times. Okay? What is the opposite of multiplying? Divide. So I need to divide. Okay? And then what is attached to the n? It's 5/8. So I divide by 5/8. Whatever's attached, you put underneath. Okay? That cancels. So n equals, now look at the other side. You always, always, always start from the top. So you're going to enter -1/2 divided by 5/8. You will always enter from the top. And when you do that, you get -4/5. Okay. On the next one, this was a bad question, so just eliminate that. We're not going to worry about it. On the next one, in the Daytona race, NASCAR drivers drive an average of 200 miles per hour. See that per? Okay. So that tells me to multiply. So what am I multiplying? 200 times the hour. Okay? 200h equals, and it's 200 what? Miles. Remember, whatever's behind is your independent, whatever's in front is your dependent. So my hours is my independent, my miles is my dependent. So 200 times h gives me the number of miles, m. Okay. Now, and it says for 500 miles. So 500 is going to go on the m side. So it goes in place of the m. Okay. So wherever I see m, I'm going to plug in 500. So 200h equals 500. Now I can solve. Okay. Step number 1, draw your line, box your variable. Always want to do that first. Step number 2, look for the operation. The operation is multiplication. The opposite of multiplication is division. And then you want to divide by whatever is by the variable, which is 200. Okay, so that cancels out, and you have h equals, and then put this in your calculator, and you get 2.5. or 2.5. So, show how long it takes them to complete